I actually feel, first I must thank you, all of you at Visakhapatnam. So happy to see all of you again. I've been coming there and meeting all of you, and very, very good feeling that you have organized this. I must tell you, Professor Govind Rao is my guru. I've learned so much from him. So I've been sitting throughout, listening attentively to what he has said, every word that he has said. I must also share with you that he is not on public finance, just not only my guru. He's at this point in the nation the most knowledgeable person on public finance. He has been the director of National Institute of Public Finance and Policy. He has been part of the Finance Commission himself. He has written a very authoritative book on public finance. There could not be any better person to guide you, speak to you, and answer your questions than Professor Govind Rao. So even I have sat through this masterclass and I've learned so much from him. So thank you, Professor Govind Rao, for being here and speaking before me. The moment I realized that you are there, I did not prepare at all because I knew there's no point. I'll not be able to, in any way, find a chink or anything additional to share than what Professor will tell us. So I've learned from him too. Because you've given me some time, I'll share some thoughts with you, and they will certainly some of them will be repetitive. I will try to remove the repetitive parts because he has elaborated them so well. But let me share some thoughts with you on the union budget. Now, as I've been teaching you up there in the macro classes, and therefore let me start from a very pedagogic manner, and you are all students and very young. So you know that fiscal policy is part of the macroeconomic policy. The macroeconomic policy basically has two tools, the monetary policy and the fiscal policy. Of course, these days people also talk of financial sector policy or financial policy, where banking and all that comes, but to me, it sits into the monetary policy. So traditionally, there are two policies, monetary and fiscal. The monetary policy comes with a frequency of every 2 months or 45 days or every month, depending in which country you are. The fiscal policy happens once a year. Now, the fiscal policy plays a very, very important role. It works through taxes and expenditure. And as Professor Govind Rao was mentioning, the deficits or the debt to GDP ratio, where he spoke about the DOMA rule. He also spoke about the deficit rule, which he has explained so well in those 2 pages. It is given there. And that is why I told you he's the guru of public finance. The world recognizes him. Now, let me continue with my thought process that macroeconomic policy has two components, fiscal and the monetary policy. The fiscal policy comes once a year and it has certain components, taxes, expenditure, deficits, and borrowing or debt, whatever you want to call it. Now, taxes and expenditure have an immediate impact on your behavior. So why is that important? It is important because if you want to increase output in the country, the output in the country can only increase if there is labor and capital. When it comes to labor, the working hours that will be put in will be decided by what the taxation policies, what the expenditure policies. So labor, it matters a lot. When it comes to capital, of course, a big role is played by the interest rates, which the monetary policy handles. Now, if you look from this angle of increasing the output, as Professor Govind Rao was mentioning, we have big dreams. Why should we not? We are a young demographic country. But then, as an economist or a trained professional and the age that I and Professor Govind Rao are, it's important we should share some truths. And he shared it that if we want to compete with the best of the world, our per capita income is only 2,500 against their $75,000. So if we have to compete and grow and match it, the definition of advanced country is $13,000. And to even match $13,000, we'll have to grow 5 times, the way he mentioned, right? So we have to be realistic, feet on the ground. Now, but we want to grow. And why should we not grow? So to grow, we need labor and capital. Capital part, monetary policy will take care. Labor part, we will take care now. In labor, so what has the government done? You and me would agree. I'm very happy to see a very balanced team sitting at, I am Visakhapatnam, two young men and two young women. But in the workforce, that's not the reality. The reality is in our country, female labor force participation is very, very low. It was in the range of 20% a few years ago. Now there is data. The report which the government of India has released a few days back, one day before the union budget, where they have traced the female labor force participation, they're saying it's around 30%. So there has been improvement in the female labor force participation. But you and me know it. We have been attending classes. How many girl children come into our classes? So we know that the labor force participation, labor force absorption of females is very low. So now, if you want to improve labor force participation, you need to focus. So what did the government focus on? Nari Shakti. So what did it say? I'm going to work a lot on female labor force participation. I'm going to give them opportunities. I'm going to skill them. And in a way, they said, we are going to make 3 crore Lakhpati Didis, right? It's encouraging them. It is taking the help of the self-help groups. It's providing them some resources. It's also saying that we will give them special mudra loans, right? We'll also give them STEM courses. So the women are taken care from that angle. Now, what happens to the youth? We have a young demographic country. And this young demographic country, we need to keep our youth engaged. Like you people are sitting in the college on the faculty, and your students are sitting. You have no time to breathe. You have no time to sleep. But if the youth is not fully engaged either in educational institution or in work, what will they do? They will do either they'll pick up drugs, or they'll become Maoists, or they'll become terrorists. You have to keep them engaged. You have to keep them engaged productively so they feel satisfied, they have some self-esteem, and they're useful to us. Their skill levels are optimally utilized. So what has the government done? Government has said for the youth, I'm going to provide them under the Skill India mission. I'm going to train them. I've opened so many IITs. I've opened so many IIMs. I've opened All India Institute of Medical Sciences. And I'm going to open a 1 lakh crore worth of fund where they can be engaged. And they want to foster entrepreneurial aspirations of youth. And many crore, 43 crore loans have been sanctioned to the youth. So youth are taken care, the women are taken care. Now comes the greed, the poor guy. Now, what does the poor guy do? He's already sick. He is not getting enough malnutrition. He is not even getting enough opportunities. So what has the government done? Government has first said that, look, under the multidimensional poverty, though we have not released the data for a very long time on poverty, but the Niti Aayog has just done a study on multidimensional poverty. Under that, we have improved 25 crore people have come out of poverty under the multidimensional poverty index. You see, in our country, as students of economics, we knew for a long time we used to speak about the nutrition content of their food. Then we said per day expenditure and all those journey we have undertaken. And now what has happened is we are talking in terms of multidimensional poverty. They've also said that we also wanted to tap the direct benefit transfers. So to that extent, we are trying to improve the productivity, the health, the food intake of the poor, so that again labor force is enhanced. Finally, farmers. That is one chunk of our society which do have tax concessions, but please remember there are too many in number, their farm sizes are too small. We cannot tax them, we don't insure their crop, we can't ensure them an income, we have no business to tax them. If we leave them to natural vulnerabilities, then they'll say, okay, don't tax our income directly. But if we buy a tractor, you are going to tax us. If I buy a car, you will tax me. If I buy a scooter, a bike, a refrigerator, a TV, you will tax me. But don't tax me on my income. You're not providing me any insurance on my income, crop income, and you haven't given me a first-class irrigation facility. So farmers are the ones who are most vulnerable. So the government said that, look, we are giving direct financial assistance to nearly 12 crore farmers. And we are also ensuring crop insurance to 4 crore farmers under PM Fasal Bima Yojana. And then we are doing something on the mandis. So that way, the government has taken or is at least attempting to take care of the labor. Then you will tell me, sir, in addition to all this, there is other labor also. And Professor Rao showed us in that statistics the expenditure on Manrega that is being taken care for normal labor. So to some extent, specific pockets have been addressed to, and in general, Manrega has been discussed. Now, we know for the last few years, everybody has been talking of sustainable growth. And under sustainable growth, then you know the issues that come up. We need to somehow stop pollution. We need to go for green things. And so the government announced lots of programs on solar and tapping the solar industry. A story on the CNG. There's a story on hydrogen. There's a story on electric vehicles. All those are also being discussed. And in that sense, the country is moving towards a net zero, which has been promised by the Prime Minister. Infrastructure and investment are extremely important. They're important because they provide multiplier effect. And Professor Rao mentioned about capital expenditure in the statistics, the data, and capital expenditure has increased multifold despite the challenges in during COVID, immediately after COVID. So there's going to be an improvement in infrastructure. Infrastructure, as I told you, has multiplier effect, both in terms of growth as in terms of employment. So the government has given lots of importance to infrastructure development and capital expenditure. Now, what has happened is, and that's been discussed also in the last few minutes, when the private sector is reluctant or fearful or cautious in investing in very uncertain times, be it the post Lehman Brothers, be it COVID, be it post COVID, be it during the Russia Ukraine war and the problems in the Middle East, then what should you do? The private sector is shy, is reluctant, not sure. Your interest rates are going up. Private sector will wait till the interest rates come down. So what will you do? The government will spend. While the government will spend, sooner or later, the private sector also starts feeling confident, looks at profitable opportunities, and starts investing. Something which is called crowding in. In the report, which has been released by Government of India on 29th of February, a day on 31st of January, a day before the budget, the crowding in has been discussed, and they're saying now the green shoots of crowding in are becoming visible. So crowding is also taking place. That also shows that investment done by the government is giving us good, yielding very positive results, and the private sector is beginning to participate in this whole process. I must now mention three things. I've already spoken to you that to improve labor and to have labor which is productive, which is not always falling sick and taking sick leave, and when they're on the job, they're able to do optimal job rather than being lazy or weak, the government has to spend money on their health as they did free vaccinations, as they did during COVID. You could go and get yourself treated even in a private hospital. They are saying that there are certain things which have come to our notice, and so there the Ayushman Bharat schemes have been started, and for Anganwadi, they are starting some malnutrition schemes. They're also speaking in terms of immunization efforts of Mission Indradhanush, to be rolled out. And the most important one to me, again, pertain to Nari Shakti, where they say they want to encourage cervical cancer vaccination for girls 9 to 14 years. The second point which I want to make in this segment is looking at housing. Housing has multiplier effect, interlinkages with about 270 industries. That is why you find whenever any economy is going down, the first thing is they will announce some SOPs for the housing sector. So the government has also said we are doing something under the rural housing, we are doing something in the urban housing, and we want to develop it. The last point I want to make in this segment is about tourism. Now, tourism, we have just seen what happened 2 weeks back, and I've been to Ayodhya myself. I have seen how the whole place is buzzing now. People were in a sleepy town, and suddenly it's no more a sleeping town. Everybody is busy. The guide is so enthused. The taxi driver is enthused. The guys on the ghat are enthused. The priest in the mandir is enthused. And the number of people working on the streets, selling bananas, selling sweets, everybody seems excited. And I was wondering how much employment it has created, how much investment it has created, and the hotel industry is moving in a big way now. So tourism is something that they spoke about, and to have good tourism places, they are talking of port connectivity, tourism infrastructure, and then they've also said it's just not Ayodhya. We are thinking because we look at the benefits of tourism, we are thinking in terms of tourism in island areas, including Lakshadweep. So I think what is at the back of mind for all this? And then there are sectoral growths, which is on agriculture, industry, and I'm not going to spend time on those because the thrust of and the gist of the policy is that we have to keep optimal utilized labor, healthy labor, skilled, educated, and learned labor to come and produce things the best they can. Monetary policy will take care of the capital. Now, come to little statistics. You know that Professor Govindrao has explained to us the even while intervention that he provided, very learning intervention. Even I did not know that the 3% of deficit to GDP ratio has been so elaborately explained in the documents. And I'm so proud that I was sitting and listening to him. So I've learned something new today. But I always knew that there is a basis, and the Fiscal Responsibility Review Committee under N.K. Singh had discussed it at length. So I understand from where Professor Rao is coming, but the linkages to the Finance Commission, I'm very impressed and I've learned it, and I'm going to go and look into those pages. So Professor Rao has told to us about the data. He has explained to us about the primary deficit. I'm also thrilled that the gross fiscal deficit on a downward gliding path, and that is where it should be. There has to be accountability and responsibility. If you borrow more, it's not a free lunch. Under the Ricardian equivalence theorem, your borrowing and taxation are invariably the same. But even if you do not want to get into the technicalities of the Ricardian equivalence theorem, he has mentioned it beautifully using the Domer rule. The Domer rule is a common sense rule which you can apply in daily life. If I borrow at 10% and I sink my money in investment which only gives me 2% return, this is a sinking phenomenon. On the other hand, if I borrow at 10% and I am able to invest in an industry which will give me a 20% return, I am on a sustainable path. That's how Professor Rao explained the Domer. Exactly. The gross fiscal deficit is looking downwards. That is also reflected in market borrowings looking downwards during the year. Market borrowings looking downwards clearly indicate that the revenue expenditure is going to be very, very productive. It reflects in the revenue deficit. The revenue deficit correction, the golden rule, of course, is there should be no deficit on the revenue account. But given the statistics as we are, the revenue deficit is down from 2.8% to 2%. That means the quality of expenditure is improving significantly. Market borrowings are down. Capital expenditure is up. You will be surprised to know that the interest payments is the largest chunk of expenditure in our country. 20% of the budget money is spent on interest payments. It's so large. All these years, we were under the impression that it is the subsidies which are the culprit. But no, and Professor Rao mentioned, primary deficit is a better indicator. I don't know if you noted the word he used. It is taking care of the past sins. Past sins are not captured under the primary deficits. But if you look, interest payment is such a large amount. When I look at interest payments and then look at that figure, it is so scary that it is much more than even the or equivalent to the corporation tax or taxes on income. That is what is the interest payment data shows. So therefore, I always say that interest payments can only be curtailed if you are fiscally more accountable on a sustainable basis. If you are fiscally more accountable on an intergenerational basis. And that is something that I liked in this budget, that they have curtailed government borrowing program. So the intentions are very clear. The glide path is visible. The intentions clearly are not populist. And Professor Rao continued, referred it even about 3 times, that the budget is transparent. The figures look really solid. That is something, the highlight of the budget. So let me conclude by saying, to me, the budget has provided continuity with the policy. The country is doing very well on the growth rate, 7% plus for nearly 4 years. Next year, obviously, it will be 7% plus. The country is doing better than the rest of the world in recording growth or recovering back from growth. You cannot have a holiday on policy just because there's an election. We all know the country is in an electoral cycle. That is okay, but a continuity has been maintained. First thing. Secondly, the intention of the government for the next tenure, if they come back in power, and if they don't, the policy momentum has been created, which should continue, and the base and foundation of that policy momentum has been laid in the interim speech, in the interim budget. So the young students like you who are about to enter industry or business world knows that the country now is moving confidently without a policy paralysis, without a policy disruption into a policy phase where infrastructure and growth and improvement in the labor force productivity is the target. Thank you for your time and attention.